Welcome. Get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. Take a slow breath in and let it out. For the next little while, there's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. You're just going to listen. And as you do, you're going to learn a little bit about one of the most celebrated performance cars of the modern era. A car that enthusiasts still talk about long after the last one left the factory, and whose reputation has only grown with time. Segment 1. Why the E92 BMW M3 matters. This is the story of the E92 BMW M3. We're going to start at the very beginning, with what this car is, where it fits in BMW's history, and why it holds such a particular place in the hearts of the people who know it best. Fact 1. The E92 M3 is the only M3 ever built with a V8 engine. It's worth sitting with that for a moment. The M3 nameplate stretches back to the mid-1980s, and across all the generations it has passed through. All the engine configurations, all the body styles, all the markets. BMW fitted a V8 to the M3 exactly once. One generation, one engine, a 4.0-litre, naturally aspirated unit called the S65, and it would go on to become one of the most celebrated engines BMW has ever produced. It wasn't the most powerful thing BMW made at the time. It wasn't the most fuel efficient, but it had a character, a sound, a texture, a willingness to rev toward its ceiling that separated it from almost anything else you could buy. The V8 is the thing the E92 is remembered for first, and is the thing that makes everything else about the car's story worth telling. Fact 2. The E92 is also the last naturally aspirated M3 ever made. The shift to turbocharged engines has been, in many ways, inevitable. Tightening emissions regulations, fuel economy targets, the industry-wide push for more power from smaller displacements, all of it pointed toward forced induction, and BMW's next M3 arrived with a turbocharged inline-six, faster in measurable terms, different in feel. The power came differently. The sound was different. The relationship between driver and throttle was different. The E92 closed a chapter, the last in a line of M3s that relied on a naturally aspirated engine to do all the work, with no turbocharger filling the gaps. For a great many enthusiasts, that chapter ending with a V8 felt like exactly the right ending. A high point at the finish line. Fact 3. Production of the E92 M3 ran from 2007 to 2013, 6 years, in which BMW built and refined what would become one of its most celebrated modern road cars. 6 years doesn't sound like a long time, but in the life cycle of a performance car, it's enough time to build a reputation that outlasts the production run by a decade or more. The E92 managed that without difficulty. Fact 4. In the United States, the car arrived as a 2008 model year vehicle, meaning American buyers had to wait just a little longer than their European counterparts before getting their hands on it. When it did arrive, the reception was immediate. Road tests praised it. Waiting lists formed. The car found its audience quickly because its audience had been waiting for it. Fact 5. The E92 doesn't stand alone. It belongs to a broader family within BMW's internal naming system, a platform designation called the E9X, which covered 3 distinct body styles simultaneously. The E90 was the four-door sedan version of the M3. The E92 was the two-door coupe. The E93 was the convertible. All three shared the same S65 V8, the same suspension architecture, the same essential mechanical identity. When enthusiasts refer to the E92, they typically mean the coupe specifically. It's the version most discussed, most sought after, most likely to be the car someone means when they say M3 in a certain tone of voice. But all three belong to the same generation, and all three carry the same essential character. Fact 6. The E9X M3 family was offered in those three body styles: sedan, coupe, and convertible, giving buyers meaningful choices about how they wanted to experience the car. The coupe was the purest expression, the sedan the most practical, the convertible the most open to the sky. Three different ways of owning the same idea. And if you're still with us, let's keep going, because the details matter here. Fact 7. The E92 M3 Coupe is a two-door, four-seat car. Not a pure two-seater, 4 seats, which meant it could serve as a daily driver, a weekend car, something you could take friends in or use for a long motorway journey without making anyone suffer. The rear seats are not generous by any reasonable measure, but they are there. That balance between sports car intensity and real-world usability was central to the M3's identity from the very beginning, and the E92 held to it. Fact 8. Production of the E92 Coupe came to an end in July 2013. The E93 convertible carried on a little beyond that date. A gentle, extended farewell for the body style that had always been the most leisurely of the three. But the coupe story closed in the summer of 2013, quietly and without ceremony. The factory moved on to whatever came next, and the E92 passed into the ownership of the people who had bought one, and the imagination of the people who hadn't yet. Fact 9. By the time that production run closed, BMW had built more than 40,000 examples of the E92 M3 Coupe alone. For a high-performance model at that price point, it's a significant number, a sign that the car found a genuine audience, that its particular combination of usability and driving engagement resonated with buyers across multiple years and multiple markets. More than 40,000 coupes, each one carrying that V8 engine, each one built to a specification that BMW would never revisit. Fact 10. Today, the E92 M3 is widely regarded as a modern classic, and it has earned that status for specific, articulable reasons. Its naturally aspirated V8, its available manual gearbox, its analog driving character, all of it increasingly feels like it belongs to a different era. An era before driving became managed and assisted and optimized to the point where the car does a great deal of the work on your behalf. The E92 asks you to participate. It rewards the driver who wants to be involved. That quality, the sense that you are driving the car rather than supervising it, is exactly why well-maintained examples continue to hold their value, why communities dedicated to the car remain active long after the last one rolled off the line, and why the word classic feels not like nostalgia but like accuracy. Take a slow breath. What made the E92 feel so different was not just its timing, but the engine BMW chose to put in it. Segment 2. The heart of the car. The S65 V8. If you're still awake, that's perfectly fine. And if you're drifting, that's fine too. Just let the words come to you at whatever pace feels right. We spent time in the first segment with the E92 as an idea, its place in BMW's history, its body styles, its production numbers, the simple fact of what it was. Now we arrive at the thing that made it unlike anything else wearing an M3 badge before or since: the engine. Because before you understand anything else about the E92, you have to reckon with what BMW put under that long hood, and why the decision to put it there was so unusual and so significant. This is the story of the S65. Fact 11. The engine in the E92 M3 carries the internal designation S65B40. In BMW's naming system, the S prefix identifies a motorsport-derived engine built by the M division rather than the standard BMW powertrain team, and held to a different set of priorities. The 65 identifies it within the M division's engine family. The B denotes petrol, and the 40 tells you its displacement, 4 litres, in round numbers. It's a code that doesn't mean much to most people on its own, but within the community of people who follow BMW closely, S65B40 carries a certain weight. It's the shorthand for something that doesn't need a long explanation: a naturally aspirated V8 built by people whose job was to make engines that were better than they needed to be. Fact 12. That displacement, 4.0 litres, is the product of 8 cylinders arranged in a V configuration, each contributing exactly half a litre of swept volume. It's a tidy, symmetrical number, and it reflects the kind of deliberate engineering precision that runs through the S65's entire design. BMW didn't arrive at 4 litres by accident. They arrived at it by deciding exactly what this engine needed to do, and then building precisely that. A naturally aspirated 4.0 litre V8 is a particular kind of thing. It has room to breathe. It has the displacement to generate real torque without needing a turbocharger to amplify the pressure. And it has the configuration, 8 cylinders, firing in sequence, to produce a sound that is, by most accounts, one of the more extraordinary things a production car engine has managed in the modern era. Fact 13. The S65 didn't begin from nothing. Its architecture was developed from the S85, the larger V10 that BMW fitted to the E60 M5 and the E60 generation M6. That engine, a 5.0 litre naturally aspirated unit producing over 500 horsepower, was itself one of the engineering landmarks of its era. A road car engine that felt genuinely connected to the world of motorsport in a way that most production engines simply don't. The S65 took that foundation and scaled it, reducing the displacement, reducing the cylinder count from 10 to 8, and recalibrating the entire package for the M3 specific requirements. It inherited the S85's design philosophy, its approach to high-revving natural aspiration, its commitment to building an engine that felt alive rather than merely powerful. The family resemblance is real, and it matters. The S65 carries the DNA of something already exceptional. Fact 14. But BMW didn't stop at the S85 as their only reference point. In developing the S65, they also drew on knowledge and technology accumulated during the company's Formula One program. specifically the experience gained from their V10 Formula One engines, which BM applied to the Williams team in the early 2000s. Those engines were extraordinary technical objects, built to operate at the very edge of what was mechanically possible, and the engineering lessons they generated didn't disappear when the program ended. The connection between a Formula One engine and a road car engine is not a direct one. The regulations, the requirements, and the cost tolerances are worlds apart. But the metallurgy, the understanding of high-speed mechanical behavior, the approach to managing the stresses that accumulate at extreme revolutions per minute, these are transferable, and BMW transferred them. When you read about the S65's capabilities and wonder how BMW achieved them in a road car, the answer, in part, is that they had practice. Fact 15. In United States specification, the S65B40 produces 414 horsepower. That figure was tested and certified to American SAE standards, a specific measurement methodology that accounts for the engine in its production state, with all ancillaries fitted and running. It is the number that appeared on the window sticker of every new E92 M3 sold at an American dealership, and it is the number that most American enthusiasts quote when talking about the car. 414 horsepower from a naturally aspirated 4.0-litre engine in a road car. In 2007, that was a serious number. From an engine with no turbocharger, no supercharger, no external assistance of any kind, just air and fuel and the work of combustion, it represented a specific output that very few production engines could match. Fact 16. In European materials, BMW quoted the S65's output at 420 metric horsepower, a slightly different number that reflects a slightly different measurement standard. Metric horsepower, sometimes called PS or Förderstärke, calculates power marginally differently than the SAE method used in the United States, which is why both figures appear in discussions about the car, and why enthusiasts sometimes find themselves comparing numbers that don't quite match. The practical difference between 414 and 420 is negligible. A rounding difference, a measurement methodology difference, not an engineering difference. The engine is the same engine, but it's the kind of detail that matters in enthusiast conversations, where precision about numbers is part of how people demonstrate that they know the subject properly. Both figures are correct. Both refer to the same extraordinary piece of engineering. Fact 17. Peak torque from the S65 is 295 pound-feet, a number that, at first glance, might seem modest relative to the horsepower figure. And in a certain sense it is. Turbocharged engines of similar or smaller displacement regularly produce substantially more torque because the forced induction artificially increases the pressure of the intake charge and allows more fuel to be burned per cycle. The S65 doesn't do that. Its torque is produced entirely by displacement and mechanical efficiency, by the normal combustion of air and fuel, without amplification. The result is a torque curve that builds gradually and linearly, without the sudden surge that characterizes turbocharged delivery, and without the plateau that often follows it. The S65 pulls from where it is and keeps pulling, all the way to the top of the rev range, which is where the real story begins. Fact 18. The S65 B40 revs to 8,400 revolutions per minute. That is its red line, the point at which the engine management system intervenes and prevents the engine from spinning any faster. 8,400 revolutions per minute. For context, many turbocharged road car engines reach their power peak somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 revolutions per minute and offer little beyond that. The S65 is still building power well past 7,000, and the final approach to the red line is accompanied by a sound and a sensation that owners describe with a consistency that suggests they are all talking about the same thing. Something urgent, something almost physical, something that makes you want to stay in the gear you're in rather than shift early and let it fade. The 8,400 revolutions per minute red line is not an accident or an indulgence. It is the direct result of every engineering decision that went into the S65. The light reciprocating components, the short stroke, the breathing characteristics, the knowledge transferred from Formula One. The red line is where all of that thinking arrives at its conclusion. Fact 19. That 8,400 revolutions per minute ceiling makes the S65 one of the highest revving production 5.8s of its era. Not just among road car engines in general, but specifically within the category of naturally aspirated V8s built for production automobiles. Most V8s, even high-performance ones, operate comfortably in a lower range and are engineered for a different kind of power delivery. The S65 belongs to a smaller group of engines that prioritize the top of the rev range, engines that reward the driver who is willing to use them fully, rather than shifting early for convenience. That quality places the S65 in unusual company for a road car. It behaves more like a racing engine adapted for road use than a road engine engineered to feel sporty. The distinction is a subtle one, but drivers feel it immediately. Fact 20. BMW published a figure during the S65's development that captures, more than almost any other statistic, just how unusual this engine is. At extreme engine speed, near the top of its rev range, the pistons inside the S65 are traveling at approximately 20 meters per second. That is their average velocity as they move up and down inside the cylinders. 20 meters every second, sustained repeatedly, thousands of times per minute. 20 meters per second is approximately 72 kilometers per hour, the speed of a car moving through an urban area. The pistons inside a running S65 at high RPM are moving as fast as a car on a city street, back and forth relentlessly, driven by nothing but the force of combustion and returned by inertia. At that speed, the engineering tolerances, the material choices, the lubrication system, the thermal management, all of it matters enormously. The fact that this engine does this reliably, in a road car, over the course of a normal ownership life, is a testament to how carefully it was built. Take a slow breath. The numbers were impressive. But what made the S65 feel special was how it delivered that performance. Segment 3. Race car thinking in a road car. Settle in a little deeper. Let your body feel heavy and comfortable wherever you are. We've talked about the S65's numbers, the displacement, the horsepower figures, the red line that sits at 8,400 revolutions per minute. Those numbers tell you what the engine is. But numbers alone don't explain why drivers remember this engine the way they do. Why it comes up in conversations about the greatest road car engines ever built. Why people who have owned one find it difficult to go back to something more conventional. For that, you have to look inside, at the engineering decisions that gave the S65 its particular character, its particular voice, its particular way of responding when you ask something of it. This segment is about how the S65 was built to think, and the thinking, it turns out, came from somewhere very close to motorsport. Fact 21. The S65 uses individual throttle bodies, one for each of its 8 cylinders. In most road car engines, a single throttle body controls airflow for the entire engine, opening and closing to regulate how much air enters the intake manifold and gets distributed from there. It's a practical, cost-effective arrangement that works well for the broad majority of driving situations. Individual throttle bodies work differently. Each cylinder has its own dedicated throttle plate, its own direct path from the outside air to the combustion chamber. When you open the throttle in an engine built this way, each cylinder responds on its own terms. There is no shared manifold to fill, no delay while pressure builds across a common plenum. The response is immediate, direct, and visceral in a way that a single throttle arrangement simply cannot replicate. It is also, not coincidentally, exactly how racing engines are built. Individual throttle bodies are a fixture of motorsport because they maximize throttle response and allow each cylinder to breathe as efficiently as possible. BMW's decision to fit them to a road car engine said something clear about the priorities behind the S65's development. Fact 22. The S65 runs a compression ratio of 12.0 to 1, a high figure for a road car engine, and one that contributes directly to both the engine's power output and its character. Compression ratio describes how tightly the air and fuel mixture is squeezed before ignition. The tighter the squeeze, the more energy is released when the mixture ignites, and the more efficiently that energy is converted into mechanical work. High compression ratios are associated with naturally aspirated engines built for performance. They're a way of extracting maximum work from each combustion event without adding forced induction. They also require high-quality fuel because a highly compressed mixture is more susceptible to pre-ignition, the phenomenon that causes knocking and, in severe cases, engine damage. The S65's 12.0 to 1 ratio reflected BMW's confidence in the engineering tolerances they were working to, and their willingness to push those tolerances in pursuit of the best possible output. Fact 23. Managing the breathing of an engine that revs to 8,400 revolutions per minute across such a wide range of operating conditions requires sophisticated control over the valve timing, the precise moment at which the intake and exhaust valves open and close in each cylinder. The S65 achieves this through BMW's double Vanos system, which applies variable valve timing to both the intake and exhaust camshafts independently. Vanos, an acronym from the German for variable camshaft control, adjusts the phase relationship between the camshaft and the crankshaft, effectively shifting the timing of valve events to suit the engine's current speed and load. Double Vanos does this on both sides of the combustion cycle simultaneously, giving the engine management system a degree of flexibility that allows the S65 to behave differently at low RPM than it does at high RPM, pulling cleanly from low speeds while still delivering its full capability as the revs build. It is one of the reasons the S65 feels tractable in traffic and extraordinary on a clear road. The same engine, calibrated differently depending on what the moment demands. Fact 24. Step back from the individual components. The throttle bodies, the compression ratio, the variable valve timing, and a clear design philosophy emerges. The S65 was built around the idea of high-revving, naturally aspirated performance, extracting power through mechanical excellence rather than forced induction, prioritizing the top of the rev range rather than low-down torque, and rewarding a driver who uses the engine fully rather than one who relies on it to do the work at any RPM. This philosophy was a deliberate departure from the direction the industry was moving, and one that BMW's subsequent M cars would not follow. The turbocharged M cars that came after the E92 are faster by the numbers, more flexible in everyday use, and better at producing torque at low engine speeds. But they are a different kind of machine, one built around a different relationship between driver and engine. The S65 represented a last, confident statement of the old philosophy before the new one took over. Many people who drove it felt that it was the right philosophy, expressed as well as it had ever been expressed. Fact 25. The E92 M3 was the first M3 to rely entirely on electronic drive-by-wire throttle control, a system in which the accelerator pedal is connected to the engine not by a physical cable, but by sensors and electronics, with a computer mediating between the driver's input and the throttle's response. Drive-by-wire is now standard across virtually all modern road cars, but at the time of the E92's development, it was still a transition technology, and fitting it to an M3, a car whose identity rested substantially on the quality of its driver communication, required careful calibration. BMW's engineers tuned the system to be as transparent as possible, to feel as close to a direct mechanical connection as the technology allowed. By most accounts, they succeeded. The E92's throttle response was consistently praised for its immediacy and precision, qualities that only became more apparent when drivers understood that there was a layer of electronics between them and the 8 individual throttle bodies responding to their foot. Fact 26. At high cornering speeds, the forces acting on the engine's oil supply become a serious engineering concern. In a conventional wet sump system, where the oil sits in a pan at the bottom of the engine and is pumped from there to the components that need lubrication, sustained high lateral G-forces can push the oil to one side of the sump, temporarily uncovering the oil pickup and starving the engine of lubrication at exactly the moment it is working hardest. The S65 addresses this with a semi-dry sump system. Rather than allowing oil to accumulate in a conventional sump, the system actively scavenges oil from the engine and returns it to a separate reservoir, maintaining consistent oil pressure, regardless of the G-forces the car is generating. It's a solution borrowed directly from motorsport. Dry sump systems are standard in racing engines for exactly this reason, and its presence in the S65 is another indication of how seriously BMW took the idea of an engine built to perform in the real world, not just on a straight road. Fact 27. The semi-dry sump isn't the only evidence of BMW's intent to build an engine for repeated hard use. The entire S65 drivetrain was engineered with sustained high RPM operation in mind, the kind of use that a track day or a long mountain road demands, where the engine might spend extended periods near its limits rather than the brief intermittent bursts that characterize most road driving. This approach to engineering, building for the extreme rather than the average, has consequences throughout the car. Components are specified to tolerances beyond what everyday driving strictly requires. Materials are chosen for durability under stress, rather than cost efficiency under normal conditions. The result is an engine that responds to hard use without complaint, one that doesn't feel like it's being asked to do something it wasn't designed for when you use it fully, because it was designed for exactly that. Fact 28. The S65 is widely considered one of the best-sounding BMW engines ever made, a claim that BMW has produced no shortage of excellent-sounding engines makes all the more meaningful. The particular combination of factors that gives the S65 its acoustic character, 8 cylinders, natural aspiration, individual throttle bodies, a red line approaching 8,500 revolutions per minute, produces a sound that is difficult to describe accurately, but easy to recognize. At low revs, it is composed and purposeful. Through the mid-range, it develops urgency. And in the final approach to the red line, it takes on a quality that owners reach for dramatic language to describe. A shriek, a wail, something that sits at the edge of mechanical and musical. The individual throttle bodies contribute a particular induction sound as they snap open, an intake roar layered beneath the exhaust note that gives the engine a three-dimensional quality, a sense of air being consumed in quantity. There are people who bought an E92 M3 substantially because of the sound. They are not wrong to have done so. Fact 29. Alongside the sound, the quality most consistently associated with the S65 is its power delivery, linear, immediate, and entirely free of the surge and plateau that characterize turbocharged performance. Press the throttle in an E92 M3, and the response is proportional and direct. More throttle means more power, smoothly and predictably, from idle to redline. There is no lag at the bottom of the range while boost pressure builds, no sudden rush of power once it arrives, no sense that the engine is operating in two distinct modes depending on where the revs sit. This linearity sounds like a small thing until you have driven a car without it. The absence of turbo lag means that the engine is always where you expect it to be, always responsive, always communicating, never making you wait. In a car built around the quality of its driver engagement, that consistency matters enormously. It is one of the reasons the E92 feels smaller and more connected than its size and power output might suggest. Fact 30. Step all the way back from the technical details, the throttle bodies, the compression, the variable valve timing, the induction sound, and what you are left with is this. The S65 V8 became the defining feature of the E92 M3's identity. Not the chassis, not the styling, not the badge, the engine. That is not always the case with performance cars. Often the chassis is the thing, or the overall package, or the way a car communicates through its steering and its seat. All of those things matter in the E92 too, and we'll spend time with them. But when people talk about what the E92 M3 was, they tend to start with the engine, because the engine is what made it irreplaceable, what made it the last of something, what made it worth talking about a decade and more after the last one was built. The S65 isn't just a component in a car, it's the reason the car exists in the way that it does. Take a slow breath. But a great M3 needs more than an engine. it needs a chassis that can match it. Segment 4, built around balance. If you're still with us, let your eyes stay closed. Let the words just come to you. We've spent 2 segments now inside the engine. First with the numbers that define it, then with the engineering philosophy that shaped it. The S65 is the heart of the E92 story, and it deserved that time. But an engine, however extraordinary, is only one part of what makes a car feel the way it feels. What surrounds that engine, the structure it sits in, the suspension that connects it to the road, the decisions about where mass is placed and how it is managed, determines whether the promise of the powertrain is actually delivered to the driver or whether it is lost in the translation. BMW understood this. The E92 M3 was not built around a great engine and then given a capable chassis as an afterthought. The chassis was conceived alongside the engine, with the same rigor and the same intent, to produce a car that felt as good as its specifications suggested it should. And the starting point for all of that thinking was balance. Fact 31. BMW engineered the E92 M3 to achieve a near-perfect 50-50 weight distribution, equal mass over the front and rear axles, the configuration that chassis engineers consider closest to ideal for a high-performance road car. A car balanced this way carries the same burden at each end, which means it asks the same thing of its front tires as it does of its rear tires, and it responds to inputs at both ends with a symmetry that a front-heavy or rear-heavy car simply cannot replicate. The pursuit of 50-50 distribution in a front-engine car is not straightforward. The engine, sitting ahead of the firewall, wants to push weight toward the nose. Everything else in the car, the engineering, the packaging decisions, the placement of heavy components, has to push back. In the E92, BMW pushed back deliberately and systematically, making specific choices about where things would live in order to arrive at a number that the chassis would reward. Fact 32. One of the most direct of those choices was the relocation of the battery. In most cars, the battery lives in the engine bay, close to the alternator that charges it, close to the starter motor it powers, and convenient for the engineers who are connecting everything together. In the E92 M3, the battery was moved to the rear of the car, mounted in the boot area. It is a heavy component for its size, and placing it at the rear rather than the front shifts a meaningful amount of mass away from the nose and toward the tail. On its own, it would not transform the weight distribution, but it is part of a broader approach, a series of decisions, each contributing a small amount, that add up to a car balanced the way BMW intended. The battery relocation is the kind of detail that you only discover when you open the boot of an E92 and find it there, unexpectedly. And when you understand why, it tells you something about the seriousness of the engineering behind the car. Fact 33. The E92 M3 Coupe came from the factory with a carbon fiber roof as standard equipment, not as an option, not as a special edition feature, as standard on every coupe, fitted as part of the base specification. Carbon fiber is a material associated in most people's minds with racing cars, an exotic machinery built in small numbers at extreme expense. It is light and stiff, properties that make it desirable wherever weight and structure are both concerns. At the time of the E92's development, fitting it to a series production road car as a standard component was unusual enough to be notable. BMW did it anyway, because the engineering case was clear. Fact 34. The reason the carbon fiber roof mattered was not primarily about the total weight it saved, though it did save weight. It was about where that weight was saved. The roof is one of the highest points on the car's body. Mass, positioned high in a vehicle, raises its center of gravity, which in turn makes it more resistant to changes in direction, more prone to body roll, and generally less agile in the kind of dynamic situations where agility matters most. By replacing a steel roof with carbon fiber, BMW reduced mass at the highest point of the car's structure. The center of gravity dropped. The car became more willing to change direction, more responsive to inputs, more stable through corners at high speed. The improvement is not something you can measure with a stopwatch on a straight road, but on a winding one, drivers feel it. That quality of willingness, of a car that turns because you asked it to, rather than in spite of its own reluctance. Fact 35. The E92 was the first series production M3 to feature a carbon fiber roof as standard equipment. That distinction placed it at the front of a trend that has since become more common in the performance car world, but which, at the time of the E92's launch, was genuinely novel for a car at this price point. Previous M3 generations had used steel roofs. The E92 changed that, and in doing so, established a precedent that subsequent M cars would follow. Being first matters in ways that go beyond bragging rights. It means the E92 was the car that demonstrated the approach was viable at scale, that carbon fiber could be integrated into series production reliably, consistently, and within a cost structure that allowed the car to reach its intended market. The lessons learned in the E92 informed how BMW approached lightweight materials in later models. The car earned its place in that history. Fact 36. There is a footnote to the carbon roof story that enthusiasts find quietly charming. If a buyer chose to add the optional moonroof, the glass panel that opens to let in air and light, the carbon fiber roof was removed and replaced with a conventional steel one. The moonroof required a cutout and a mechanism that the carbon structure could not accommodate, and so the two options were mutually exclusive. It presented buyers with a genuine choice between two different versions of the car's character. The carbon roof was the driver's choice. Lighter, lower center of gravity, no glass panel to admit road noise or add a small amount of weight overhead. The moonroof was the tourer's choice. A little more comfort, a little more occasion, at the cost of the structural and dynamic benefits the carbon offered. Neither was wrong. They were simply different expressions of what an E92 M3 could be. Fact 37. The weight-saving philosophy extended further forward in the car. The E92's hood, the large panel covering the engine bay, was manufactured from aluminium rather than the steel used in most production cars. Aluminium is significantly lighter than steel for equivalent strength, and the hood is a large panel at the front of the car, meaning the weight saved there contributes to both the overall mass reduction and the front-to-rear balance that BMW was working to achieve. An aluminium hood is one of those changes that you notice immediately when you open it. The panel moves differently, lighter in your hand, requiring less effort to lift, settling back into place with a different quality than a steel panel would. It's a sensory detail that connects the driver to the engineering, a physical reminder that the people who built this car cared about mass in a way that the builders of ordinary cars do not. Fact 38. Aluminium appeared elsewhere in the chassis too, not in a single dramatic application, but distributed across multiple components, each contributing a modest reduction in mass that accumulated into something meaningful in total. Subframe components, structural brackets, elements of the body structure, all assessed, all candidates for the lighter material where engineering requirements allowed. BMW treated every kilogram as a decision rather than an inevitability. This approach to lightweight engineering, systematic, distributed, unglamorous, is harder to communicate than a single headline specification. There is no single fact that captures it. It lives in the accumulation of small choices, each sensible on its own, each reinforcing the others. The E92's weight, at around 1,580 kilograms in standard trim, reflected all of those choices working together. Fact 39. At each corner of the E92, the suspension components connecting the wheel to the chassis were forged from aluminium. Control arms and other pieces that, in a less focused car, would have been made from heavier steel. These components are part of what engineers call unsprung mass, the weight that exists below the suspension springs and dampers, moving with the wheel rather than with the body of the car. Unsprung mass matters because it is the part of the car that must follow every change in road surface. The lighter it is, the more quickly and accurately the wheel can respond to those changes, staying in contact with the road, maintaining grip, transmitting information back through the suspension to the chassis and ultimately to the driver. Reducing unsprung mass is one of the most effective things an engineer can do to improve a car's ride and handling simultaneously, because a lighter wheel assembly tracks the road better and disturbs the sprung mass less. The forged aluminium components in the E92 suspension contributed to both the quality of its ride and the precision of its handling. Fact 40. Taken together, the 50-50 weight distribution, the rear-mounted battery, the carbon fiber roof, the aluminium hood, the aluminium chassis components, the forged suspension pieces, all of these decisions added up to a car with a reputation for balance and precision that distinguished it from almost everything else in its segment. Balance is not a quality that announces itself. It doesn't produce a headline horsepower number or a dramatic 0 to 60 time. It makes itself known quietly, incrementally, through the accumulation of positive experiences at the wheel, the turn-in that happens exactly when you expected it, the way the car sits flat through a fast corner, the absence of the corrections and adjustments that a less well-balanced car demands. The E92's balance was the foundation on which everything else was built, and the people who spent time with the car felt it deeply, even when they couldn't always articulate exactly what they were feeling. Take a slow breath. BMW did not just make the M3 lighter and more balanced. It also made it visibly more aggressive. Segment 5, a wider, more focused body. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders relax. There's no rush here. We've spent time now beneath the surface of the E92. Inside the engine, inside the engineering philosophy, inside the structural decisions that gave the car its balance and its precision. All of that work is invisible when you're looking at the car from the outside. You can't see the rear-mounted battery or the forged aluminium control arms or the carbon fiber layered into the roof. What you can see, what stops people when the car passes them on the street, What makes someone turn and look a second time in a car park is the body. And the body of the E92 M3 is not the body of a regular 3 Series that has been given a spoiler and some badges. It is something considerably more purposeful than that. This segment is about what BMW did to the exterior of the E92 and why they did it. Because almost nothing you see on this car is there purely for the way it looks. Fact 41. The E92 M3's body is wider than the standard 3 Series coupe on which it is based. Not by a modest amount that you'd need a tape measure to confirm, noticeably, visibly wider. In a way that the eye registers immediately, even without a side-by-side comparison. The widening was a deliberate engineering decision before it was a styling one, driven by the need to accommodate the wider stance that the M3's chassis and performance targets demanded. Width in a performance car is not decoration. A wider track, the distance between the left and right wheels on each axle, gives the car a broader base from which to generate cornering force. It lowers the roll center, reduces the transfer of weight from the inside wheels to the outside wheels during cornering, and allows the tires to work more effectively because they are asked to handle a more manageable load. The E92 is wider because being wider makes it better. The visual statement it makes is a consequence of the engineering, not the other way around. Fact 42. To cover the wider track without leaving the tires exposed beyond the body line, the E92 uses flared fenders, extended wheel arches that push out further from the body than those of the standard car. The flaring is integrated into the body panels rather than bolted on as separate add-ons, which gives the M3's wider stance a cohesive, intentional quality. It looks like it was designed this way from the beginning, which at the level of the M3's development, it was. Flared fenders are one of the oldest visual signals in the language of performance cars, a shorthand for wider tracks, bigger tires, and serious intent. On the E92, they read as natural and clean rather than aggressive or overwrought, a widening of the car's shoulders that makes it look planted and purposeful without resorting to drama. The shape earns its width. You look at it and understand immediately that this is not a car wearing a costume. Fact 43. The wider body translated into a measurably wider track dimension at both the front and rear axles compared to the standard E923 series coupe. The front track increased meaningfully and the rear track increased by a similar margin, the car sitting noticeably further apart at each corner than its non-M sibling. That wider footprint is part of what gives the E92 M3 its characteristic stance. Low, planted, with a sense of grip and readiness that the narrower standard car does not communicate. When you stand behind an E92 M3 and compare it mentally to a standard 3 Series, the difference is visible in the way the tires seem to push out toward the edges of the wheel arches rather than sitting comfortably within them. The arches are full. The car fills its own body in a way that suggests the engineers left nothing on the table. Fact 44. BMW's own ordering and specification materials from the period specifically referenced the wheel arch extensions as a defining visual element of the M3, acknowledging that the wider body wasn't incidental, but central to the car's identity and purpose. It was unusual for a manufacturer's official documentation to call out a specific body detail in those terms, and it reflected the straightforward relationship between the M3's form and function. The wheel arch extensions existed because the wider track required them. They were documented because they mattered. This kind of transparency in BMW's communication about the E92 was consistent throughout the car's marketing. The M division has generally been willing to explain why their cars look the way they do, because the reasons are genuinely interesting and the engineering behind the appearance is a selling point in itself. Buyers who understood the wheel arch extensions weren't buying a wider looking car. They were buying a wider car, and the extensions were just the evidence of that. Fact 45. Look at the E92 M3's hood from the side, and you'll notice a raised section running along its center line. A dome-shaped protrusion that lifts the surface of the bonnet above the plane of the surrounding bodywork. This is the power dome, and it is there for a specific reason. The S65 V8 is a taller engine than the inline-6 it replaced, and without the dome, the hood would not close over it. Functional bonnet bulges and power domes have a long history in performance cars. They appear whenever an engine is too large or too tall to sit beneath a flat bonnet line, and they communicate something about what is underneath before you have even opened the car. The E92's power dome is restrained and well integrated, rising and falling smoothly rather than forcing itself on the eye. But it is there, and it is real, and it means something. Every time a driver looks across the bonnet from the cockpit, they see it. A reminder of what is sitting just beneath the surface. Fact 46. BMW made a statement about the E92 M3's body that enthusiasts have quoted ever since. Only the doors, the boot lid, the windows, and the lights were shared with the standard 3 Series coupe. Everything else, every panel, every surface, every exterior component was unique to the M3. Sit with that for a moment. In a car that begins its life on the same production platform as a family saloon, where the cost efficiencies of part sharing are significant and the pressures to maximize those efficiencies are real, BMW chose to make almost every visible external component specific to the M3. The front wings were unique. The bonnet was unique. The front and rear bumpers were unique. The sills were unique. The roof was unique. Only the pieces that could reasonably be shared without compromising the M3's identity were carried over. It was an expensive decision, and a deliberate one. The M division was not building a performance-tuned 3 Series. They were building a different car that happened to share a platform with one. Fact 47. The front bumper of the E92 M3 is dominated by large air intakes, openings that are functional rather than decorative, directing air to where the car needs it most. The scale of these intakes is one of the things that distinguishes the M3's front end from that of lesser 3 Series variants at a glance. Standard cars have smaller, more restrained openings. The M3's front end has a hungry, open quality, an expression, in visual terms, of an engine that consumes air in significant quantity and needs it delivered efficiently. The intakes are integrated into the bumper's design in a way that feels resolved and complete, rather than bolted on. They are part of the bumper's architecture, not additions to it, which reflects the broader approach to the E92's exterior design. Function and form considered together from the beginning, each informing the other rather than competing. Fact 48. Those large front intakes serve 2 distinct purposes. The primary flow feeds the engine. The S65, with its individual throttle bodies and high compression, needs a consistent supply of cool, dense air to operate at its best, and the intakes are sized to deliver that supply at the speeds that the car travels. The secondary flow is directed to the brakes, specifically to the front brake discs and calipers, which under hard use generate significant heat and benefit substantially from a directed supply of cool air. Brake cooling is one of those engineering details that matters enormously in the real world and barely exists in ordinary road cars. A car that will never be driven hard doesn't need directed brake cooling. A car built with the expectation that it will be driven hard. At track days, on mountain roads, in the kind of spirited use that BMW new M3 buyers would engage in, needs it built in from the start. The E92 M3 was built with that expectation, and the intakes in its front bumper reflect it. Fact 49. Behind each front wheel, the E92 M3 features side gills, small vented openings in the body between the front wheel arch and the door. These gills are functional, not ornamental, and their purpose is to manage the airflow behavior around the front wheel arches. As air moves over and around the front wheels at speed, turbulence builds up in the wheel arch, air that has been disturbed by the rotating wheel and has nowhere clean to go. Left unmanaged, this turbulence creates aerodynamic drag and pressure that works against the car's efficiency and stability. The side gills provide an exit route for that disturbed air, a path out of the wheel arch and away from the body rather than back into the underbody airflow. It is a small intervention with a measurable effect, and it is the kind of detail that separates a car engineered with genuine aerodynamic intent from one that simply looks aerodynamic. The gills on the E92 work. You can verify this by understanding what happens to the airflow without them, and then understanding why BMW put them there. Fact 50. Stand back from the individual details, the flared fenders, the power dome, the large intakes, the side gills, and look at the E92 M3 as a complete object. What you see is a car that wears its purpose plainly. Every visual element that distinguishes it from the standard 3 Series has a reason behind it. The width exists because the chassis required it. The dome exists because the engine required it. The intakes exist because the engine and brakes required them. The gills exist because the aerodynamics required them. This is what it looks like when form follows function honestly, when the appearance of a car is the direct consequence of engineering decisions rather than a styling exercise imposed on top of them. The E92 M3 does not look aggressive because BMW wanted it to look aggressive. It looks the way it does because BMW built it to perform the way it does. And performance of that kind has an appearance. The shape is the engineering, made visible. Take a slow breath. The shape looked aggressive, but BMW was also chasing function, not just style. Segment 6. Airflow, exhaust, and visual identity. If you're still with us, let everything soften a little. Your breathing, your thoughts, your grip on the day. We've been looking at the E92 M3 from the outside. The widened body, the flared arches, the functional openings that direct air to the engine and brakes. We've established that almost nothing on the exterior of this car is there purely for appearance. But there is more to the aerodynamic story than the front end. And there is more to the visual identity of the E92 than its width and its intakes. This segment finishes the exterior picture. The underfloor, the exhaust, the mirrors, the colors. And it ends where any honest account of a car like this has to end, which is with the simple fact of what it looks like standing still before it has done anything at all. Fact 51. BMW's engineers paid careful attention to the airflow beneath the E92 M3 as well as above it. The car's underfloor was designed to be as flat and uninterrupted as possible, smoothing the passage of air underneath the car and reducing the turbulence that a cluttered, unmanaged underside creates. Paired with a subtle lip spoiler at the rear, the flat underfloor formed part of an integrated aerodynamic system, front to back, top to bottom, that BMW said was engineered to improve overall efficiency at speed. The rear spoiler lip is easy to miss. It does not announce itself the way the front intakes do, and it carries none of the visual drama of the wide arches. It sits quietly at the trailing edge of the boot lid, doing its job, managing the airflow as it leaves the rear of the car, reducing lift, keeping the tail settled at high speed. Subtlety in aerodynamics is often a sign of confidence. A car that needs a large wing to stay planted at speed is a car whose underlying aerodynamics required supplementing. The E92 needed only the lip. Fact 52. The result of all that aerodynamic work, the shaped exterior surfaces, the flat underfloor, the managed front intakes and rear exit, is a drag coefficient of 0.31. For a performance car with genuine sporting intentions and a body that does not compromise its width or stance in pursuit of slipperiness, 0.31 is a respectable number. It places the E92 comfortably among the more aerodynamically efficient cars in its class rather than at the extreme end of either scale. A drag coefficient of 0.31 means the car moves through air with reasonable efficiency, enough that its engine is not working unnecessarily hard at highway speeds, enough that stability at higher velocities is not a concern, enough that the aerodynamic balance between front and rear is consistent and predictable. It is the number of a car whose aerodynamics were taken seriously without being the defining constraint around which everything else was designed. The E92 was shaped for performance first, and the drag figure followed from that. Fact 53. Walk around to the rear of an E92 M3, and the first thing most people notice, after the width, after the spoiler, after the overall sense of purposeful compression in the rear bodywork, is the exhaust. 4 tips, arranged symmetrically in pairs, sitting low in the rear, valance, and finished in polished chrome. The quad exhaust is one of the E92's signature visual traits, one of the first things people mention when describing how the car looks, and one of the details that distinguishes it instantly from any other 3 Series variant. 4 exhaust tips on a road car is a statement. It says something about the engine underneath, about the number of cylinders, the volume of gas being expelled, the level of performance being managed at the car's rear. On a car with a V8 and an 8,400 revolutions per minute redline, the quad tips are not decoration. They are the natural consequence of an exhaust system sized to flow freely at high engine speeds, packaged symmetrically because symmetry suited the car's character and the M division's sense of visual order. Fact 54. BMW described the exhaust system in precise terms in their own materials. A twin-chamber arrangement with twin dual-chrome tailpipes, two chambers feeding two pairs of tips, left and right. The twin-chamber design is not purely about aesthetics. It reflects the exhaust's internal structure, the way the system manages back pressure and flow from the V8's two banks of cylinders, and the tuning decisions made to balance performance with the sound character BMW's engineers were working toward. The chrome finish on the tailpipes was also not incidental. Chrome ages well, resists discoloration from heat and exhaust gases better than many alternatives, and carries a visual clarity that suits the M3's overall aesthetic: purposeful but not crude, technical but not industrial. The tips on a well-maintained E92 retain their presence even after years of use, which matters in a car whose rear end makes as strong a first impression as this one does. Fact 55. The exhaust system includes electronically controlled valves that respond to load, opening further as the engine works harder, closing to a more restricted position during lighter use. This variable behavior serves two purposes. At low loads, during gentle urban driving, on a light throttle on a motorway, the more restricted exhaust path contributes to a quieter, more refined exhaust note, one that doesn't intrude on conversation or tire the driver over a long journey. Under load, when the throttle is open, when the engine is climbing toward its red line, when the car is being used in the way it was designed to be used, the valves open fully and the exhaust is allowed to flow and sound as the engine demands. The result is a car that can be civilized when you want it to be, and extraordinary when you don't. The transition between those two states, as the valves open and the note deepens and rises, is one of the E92 M3's more theatrical moments, and it never gets old. Fact 56. The exterior mirrors on the E92 M3 are M-specific designs, shaped differently from the mirrors fitted to standard 3 Series models. The shapes are not arbitrary. They were developed with aerodynamic intent, profiled to reduce the drag and wind noise that mirrors, by their nature, tend to generate. A mirror that sits proud of the door and catches the airflow creates a small but real aerodynamic penalty. And at the speeds the E92 was built for, small real penalties accumulate into something worth addressing. The M-specific mirrors are narrower in profile and better integrated into the door's surface than their standard counterparts, presenting a cleaner face to the oncoming air and managing the flow around them with greater efficiency. They are also, not incidentally, one of the visual cues that a knowledgeable observer uses to identify an E92 M3 at a distance. A detail that says, to those who know what they're looking at, that this is not a standard car. Fact 57. The E92 M3 was offered in a range of colors that balanced restraint with occasional drama. Alpine white, a clean, bright white that showed the car's lines with particular clarity. Jerez black, a deep, near absolute black that gave the M3 a formal, almost severe presence. Interlagos blue, perhaps the most celebrated of the palette, a medium blue with metallic depth, named after the Brazilian racing circuit, a color that became closely associated with the E92 in enthusiast culture. Melbourne red, rich and saturated, a red that suited the car's proportions without tipping into aggression. Space grey, a sophisticated cool metallic that occupied the territory between silver and charcoal. Each color expressed a different version of the same car. The white was pure and precise. The black was authoritative. The blue was perhaps the most alive, the color that most people, asked to picture an E92 M3, tend to picture. These are not accidental associations. Colors accumulate meaning through the cars they appear on, and Interlagos blue accumulated a great deal of it on the E92. Fact 58. The carbon fiber roof that we discussed in the previous segment, standard equipment on every coupe that didn't leave the factory with the optional moonroof, contributed something to the E92's visual identity beyond its engineering benefits. It broke up the roofline with a different texture and a different sheen from the painted body panels around it, a subtle but distinctive detail that the eye registers without necessarily identifying. Seen from certain angles, particularly from behind or above, the contrast between the carbon weave and the painted surfaces gave the car a visual layer that the standard 3 Series roof did not have. On close inspection, it announced itself clearly. The characteristic woven pattern of carbon fiber is immediately recognizable to anyone who knows it. From further away, it simply looked different, looked right, looked like something that belonged on a car built with this level of intent. The roof was part of the E92's visual language, as well as its engineering vocabulary. Fact 59. All of these elements, the wide arches, the power dome, the quad exhaust, the aerodynamic mirrors, the carbon roof, the color palette, combined to create a car with a visual identity that was immediately and unmistakably its own. You did not need to see the badges to know what you were looking at. The proportions told you, the stance told you, the rear end told you. This kind of visual coherence, the sense that a car is exactly what it appears to be and could not reasonably be mistaken for anything else, is harder to achieve than it sounds. It requires that every external element speaks the same language, that no detail contradicts the character expressed by the others. The E92 M3 achieved it. Walk around the car and every surface, every opening, every detail reinforces the same message. Fact 60. Even standing still, the E92 M3 looked like a car built with motorsport intent. Not a car styled to suggest motorsport, not a car decorated with references to racing. A car that looked the way it did because it was engineered the way it was, and the engineering had a character that expressed itself in the shape as naturally as the shape of a tool expresses its function. A hammer looks like a hammer because it was designed to drive nails. A car built around a high-revving V8, a widened track, an aerodynamically managed body, and a suspension tuned for precision looks like the E92 M3, because that is what a car looks like when all of those things are true of it simultaneously. The visual identity and the engineering identity were the same identity. You saw the car and understood, immediately and correctly, something real about what it was. Take a slow breath, and once you got behind the wheel, that intent became even more obvious. Segment 7, transmission, steering, and driver control. Let your breathing slow. Let the world outside get a little quieter. We've spent time with the E92 M3 as an object. Its engine, its structure, its body, the engineering decisions that gave it its shape and its character. Now we arrive at the part of the story that matters most to the people who actually drove these cars. Because all of that engineering, the V8, the balanced chassis, the wide track, and the carbon roof, and the forged suspension only becomes real at the moment you sit in the car, close the door, and begin to move. This segment is about that experience, about the controls that connect you to the machine, and how BMW chose to calibrate them. Fact 61. Buyers of the E92 M3 could choose a 6-speed manual transmission, a traditional gearbox, operated by a clutch pedal and a gear lever, requiring the driver to select each ratio manually and manage the engagement themselves. In an era when manual transmissions were beginning their long, slow retreat from the performance car market, BMW's decision to offer one in the M3 was both a commercial calculation and a philosophical statement. The manual gearbox in the E92 was well regarded. The throws were precise, the gate was clearly defined, and the clutch weight and travel were calibrated for a car of this character, firm enough to communicate, light enough for repeated use without fatigue. Drivers who chose the manual accepted the trade-off in outright shift speed in exchange for a more direct, more personal relationship with the drivetrain. Each gear change was something they had done, not something the car had done on their behalf. For a significant portion of the E92's buyers, that distinction mattered enormously, and still does. Fact 62. The alternative was the 7-speed MDCT, M double clutch transmission, a dual-clutch automated gearbox that could execute gear changes with a speed and precision that no human operating a conventional manual could match. The DCT used 2 separate clutch packs, one for odd gears and one for even, with the next gear pre-selected and ready to engage the moment the current one was released. The result was a shift time measured in milliseconds, a seamless, almost violent transition between ratios that kept the engine in its power band without interruption. For drivers who wanted the fastest possible performance from the E92, the DCT was the clear choice. For those who wanted the most involving experience, the manual was. Both were legitimate answers to the same question, and the existence of both reflected BMW's understanding that M3 buyers were not a monolithic group with identical priorities. The DCT and the manual were different instruments for playing the same music, and the choice between them was deeply personal. Fact 63. When the MDCT arrived in the E92 M3, it was praised extensively, not just for its shift speed, which was remarkable, but for its calibration. A dual-clutch transmission that shifts quickly but clumsily is not a pleasant thing to live with. The jerky, low-speed behavior that afflicted some early dual-clutch systems in other cars gave the technology a reputation for harshness that the MDCT did not deserve. BMW's engineers spent considerable time tuning its behavior across the full range of driving conditions, from slow urban maneuvering through to full throttle acceleration, and the result was a gearbox that felt appropriate in each of those contexts. At the time of its introduction, it set a benchmark. Subsequent dual-clutch systems in other performance cars were measured against what the MDCT had demonstrated was possible. Fact 64. The E92 M3 uses a hydraulic power steering system, a setup in which hydraulic pressure, generated by a pump driven by the engine, assists the driver's steering inputs by reducing the effort required to turn the wheels. Hydraulic power steering is the older of the two main assisted steering technologies, and it has been substantially displaced in modern cars by electric power steering, which is more fuel efficient and easier to package. But hydraulic steering has a quality that electric systems have found difficult to replicate. A natural, organic feel. A way of communicating the forces acting on the front wheels back through the column to the driver's hands. The weight of the steering changes as conditions change. It lightens when the car is moving slowly and there is little lateral force to communicate. It builds as speed increases and the tires begin to generate cornering load. That variation, that liveness in the wheel, is what enthusiasts mean when they talk about steering feel. And the E92 M3's hydraulic system delivered it in full measure. Fact 65. The hydraulic steering's natural feedback is one of the qualities most consistently praised by enthusiasts who have spent time with the E92 M3. In a landscape where successive generations of performance cars have moved to electric steering and lost some of that communication in the process, the E92 setup feels increasingly significant in retrospect. A last example of what was possible before the technology changed. Drivers describe the E92 steering as honest. It tells you what the front tires are doing. When grip is plentiful, it feels positive and confident. As the limit approaches and the front tires begin to work at the edge of their capability, the wheel communicates that change in a way that gives a skilled driver the information they need to manage the situation. It doesn't filter. It doesn't approximate. It reports. And for a car built around the idea of driver engagement, reporting accurately is perhaps the most important thing the steering can do. Fact 66. At the rear axle, the E92 M3 uses an M variable differential lock, a limited slip differential that manages the distribution of torque between the left and right rear wheels. In a conventional open differential, all of the drive torque is directed to whichever wheel has the least resistance, which in slippery or limit conditions means the power goes to the wheel with the least grip, the opposite of what is useful. A limited slip differential resists that tendency, keeping torque distributed more evenly and maintaining traction in conditions where an open diff would spin one wheel ineffectively. The M variable differential lock went further than a simple mechanical limited slip unit, applying an electronically controlled level of lock that could vary according to conditions and driver inputs. Under gentle cornering, it behaved closer to an open differential, allowing the natural difference in the distances each rear wheel must travel around a corner to be accommodated without binding. Under hard acceleration, it locked more aggressively, putting power down through both rear wheels simultaneously. The effect was a car that felt planted and consistent on the exit of corners, one that used its power efficiently rather than losing it in wheel spin. Fact 67. The E92 M3 stability control system was an M-specific version of BMW's dynamic stability control, calibrated for the car's performance envelope rather than adapted from the standard 3 Series system. This distinction mattered. A stability control system tuned for a family car will intervene at thresholds that are conservative, relative to what a high-performance machine is capable of, cutting in before the driver has reached the genuinely useful part of the car's dynamic range and robbing them of the feedback and involvement they were seeking. The M-specific DSC tuning set those thresholds higher, allowing the car to move before intervention. A skilled driver could explore more of the E92's handling capability, could feel the chassis working, feel the balance shifting, make use of the dynamic range the engineers had built, without the system cutting in prematurely. The stability control was there as a safety net, not a supervisor. Fact 68. Within the DSC system, BMW offered an M-dynamic mode, a further step toward driver control, accessible through the car's interface. In M-dynamic mode, the stability control remained active, but its intervention threshold was raised still further, allowing a meaningful degree of slip at the rear before the electronics stepped in. The car could be steered on the throttle, could be balanced in a slide, could be used in the way that a driver who had learned to trust the M3's chassis and their own skills would want to use it. M-dynamic mode was not a setting for novices, and BMW made no pretense that it was. It was a tool for drivers who had developed a genuine relationship with the car and wanted the electronics to trust them with more of it. Used appropriately, it unlocked a quality in the E92 M3 that the standard DSC mode kept partially concealed. A playfulness, a willingness to rotate and respond that made the car feel alive in a way that constant electronic supervision does not permit. Fact 69. For drivers who wanted control over the suspension as well as the drivetrain, BMW offered electronic damper control as an option on the E92 M3. The system allowed the driver to adjust the behavior of the dampers, the components that control how quickly the suspension moves in response to road inputs and body forces, at the press of a button, without stopping the car or making any physical changes to the hardware. Adjustable dampers are a significant engineering feature. The suspension's behavior under any given condition is a product of the springs, the geometry, and the dampers working together, and changing the damping changes the character of the car. A softer damper setting allows more movement, absorbs road imperfections more willingly, and prioritizes ride comfort. A firmer setting resists movement, keeps the body flatter under cornering and braking loads, and prioritizes dynamic precision. Offering the driver real-time control over that trade-off was a meaningful piece of engineering, and in the E92, it was executed with genuine care. Fact 70. The electronic damper control offered 3 settings: comfort, normal, and sport, each representing a distinct calibration of the suspension's behavior. Comfort softened the damping for longer journeys, rough roads, or simply the kind of driving where arriving relaxed mattered more than arriving quickly. Normal sat in the middle, a general-purpose setting that worked well across a broad range of conditions and served as the default for most everyday driving. Sport stiffened the dampers meaningfully, tightening the car's body control, reducing roll and pitch, and sharpening the response to steering and throttle inputs in a way that rewarded committed driving. The 3 settings gave the E92 M3 3 distinct personalities within the same car. The same vehicle that could absorb a poorly surfaced road with relative composure in comfort could, with a button press, become the focused, taut, demanding machine that its engineering had always been capable of producing. This flexibility, the ability to be different things in different moments, is part of what made the E92 a credible, everyday car, as well as a serious driver's machine. It did not ask you to commit to one mode of existence. It offered you choices and trusted you to make them. Take a slow breath. BMW also gave drivers tools to personalize the way the car responded. Segment 8. Performance you could configure. If you're still with us, let your eyes stay closed. Let the words just come to you. We spent the last segment with the controls of the E92 M3, the transmissions, the steering, the differential, the dampers. The picture that emerged was of a car that offered its driver genuine choice: how to shift, how much intervention to permit, how firmly to set the suspension. That philosophy of configurability, the idea that the driver should be able to shape the car around their preferences and the demands of the moment, runs deeper than any individual system. It was a deliberate design intent, and this segment is where we see it expressed most completely. Performance that could be set, adjusted, and owned by the person behind the wheel. Fact 71. The E92 M3 introduced the M-Drive button, a feature that represented a step forward in how BM thought about personalization in a performance car. The concept was straightforward but meaningful. The driver could configure their preferred settings for the various adjustable systems: the throttle response, the stability control threshold, the damper mode, the steering weight, and then store that entire configuration as a single profile, recalled instantly at the press of a dedicated button on the steering wheel. Before M-Drive, adjusting a car's behavior to suit a particular road or a particular mood required navigating through menus, pressing multiple buttons in sequence, building the configuration piece by piece each time. M-Drive collapsed all of that into a single input. One press and the car became what you had decided in a considered moment that you wanted it to be. It was a small quality of life improvement in one sense, and a significant philosophical statement in another. An acknowledgement that the driver's preferences were worth remembering, and that the technology existed to honor them without friction. Fact 72. The E92 M3's brakes were specified to match the performance of what sat above them. The rotors were cross-drilled and ventilated. Cross-drilled meaning that a series of holes passed through the face of the disc from one side to the other, and ventilated meaning that the disc is a double-layered construction with internal veins that circulate air through the rotor as it spins. Both features serve the same ultimate purpose: managing heat. Braking converts kinetic energy into heat, and a disc that cannot shed that heat quickly enough will lose its effectiveness. A phenomenon called brake fade, where the friction material or the fluid begins to behave differently as temperature climbs. Cross-drilling helps by giving gases and heat a direct escape route from the braking surface. Ventilation helps by passing cooling air through the interior of the disc continuously. Together, they produced a braking system that could withstand repeated hard use without degrading, appropriate for a car that many of its owners would take to a track, and essential for a car honest enough to be sold as a genuine performance machine. Fact 73. The E92 M3 came on 18-inch alloy wheels as standard, a size that was, at the time of the car's launch, at the larger end of what road cars typically ran, and one that reflected the performance-oriented character of the package. The 18-inch diameter allowed for tires with enough sidewall to absorb road imperfections without transmitting every surface irregularity directly to the cabin, while still providing the low-profile look and handling precision that a smaller wheel with a taller tire cannot match. The standard alloys were styled to suit the car, spoke designs that filled the wheel arch cleanly, that looked proportionate against the wide body without appearing either too small or overwrought. They were not the most dramatic wheels available for the E92, but they were right. The kind of right that comes from specification decisions made by people who understood the whole car rather than just the individual component. Fact 74. Buyers who wanted more could choose 19-inch forged wheels, a step up in both size and construction method that carried meaningful benefits. Forged wheels are made by compressing aluminium under extreme pressure into a solid billet before machining, a process that produces a wheel that is both stronger and lighter than a cast equivalent of the same size. The reduction in unsprung mass from moving to forged construction, even at the larger 19-inch diameter, contributed to the suspension's ability to track the road accurately, and the additional visual presence of the larger wheel suited the E92's wide arches with a completeness that the 18-inch fitment, for all its correctness, did not quite achieve. The 19-inch forged option was the choice of buyers who wanted the car to look and perform at its most resolved, who understood the engineering case for forged construction and wanted to take advantage of it. It was also, simply, the option that made the E92 M3 look most fully like itself. Fact 75. The tyre sizes fitted to the standard 18-inch wheels in United States specification tell their own story about the E92's engineering. At the front, 245/40, a 245mm wide tyre on an 18-inch rim with a 40 series sidewall. At the rear, 265/40, slightly wider, the same profile. The difference between front and rear width is a deliberate stagger, a common approach in rear-wheel drive performance cars, where the driven wheels benefit from additional contact patch to put the power down. A 265mm rear tyre is a substantial piece of rubber. It provides a wide footprint for traction and cornering grip at the rear, while the slightly narrower front tyre allows the steering to feel responsive without requiring excessive effort. The combination was chosen to complement the car's near 50-50 weight distribution and the rear-wheel drive layout, to give the tyres at each end the right amount of width for the job they were being asked to do. Fact 76. In terms of straight-line acceleration, the E92 M3 could reach 60 miles per hour from rest in approximately 4.1 to 4.6 seconds, depending on the transmission specification and the conditions under which the test was conducted. The DCT-equipped car reached the lower end of that range. The dual clutch's ability to change gears without interrupting power delivery gave it an advantage that a skilled manual driver working the clutch and the gear lever as quickly as possible could approach but not quite match. The manual car's figure sat toward the upper part of the range, a reflection of the physics of clutch engagement and gear selection, rather than any deficiency in the engine or the chassis. Both numbers were, by any reasonable standard, quick. They placed the E92 firmly in the company of the serious performance cars of its era, and the fact that they were achieved by a naturally aspirated engine, without the low RPM torque advantage that a turbocharged unit would have provided, made them all the more impressive to those who understood what was producing them. Fact 77. The E92 M3's top speed was electronically limited to 155 miles per hour, a ceiling imposed by the car's management system rather than by any aerodynamic or mechanical constraint. The 155 miles per hour limit was a long-standing convention among German manufacturers, a voluntary ceiling agreed upon as a gesture toward road safety that also had the practical benefit of allowing manufacturers to specify tyres that were not rated for significantly higher speeds. The limiter was real. At 155 miles per hour, the management system would cut power and hold the car there, regardless of how much throttle was applied. For the overwhelming majority of drivers in the overwhelming majority of situations, this was entirely academic. 155 miles per hour is well beyond the legal limit on any public road in the world. But it existed, and it was a ceiling rather than the car's natural limit. Fact 78. For those who wished to raise that ceiling, BMW offered the M Drivers package, an option that, once fitted, extended the electronically governed top speed to approximately 174 miles per hour. The M Drivers package also required the purchasing dealer to verify that the buyer held a valid driving license and had completed appropriate driver training, a condition that reflected the seriousness with which BMW approached the territory above 155 miles per hour. With the limiter raised, the E92 M3 became a genuinely high-speed machine, one capable of sustained cruising at velocities that most roads on Earth are not designed to accommodate. The 174 miles per hour figure was not the absolute limit of what the car could do. It was the new ceiling that BMW considered appropriate for the additional context and training they required. Where the car's actual aerodynamic and mechanical ceiling lay remained a subject for those with access to closed circuits and the will to find out. Fact 79. Beyond the acceleration times and the top speed figures, what defined the E92 M3's performance was the way it delivered that performance. The response and the feel as much as the raw numbers. A car can produce the same 0 to 60 time in many different ways. It can surge from a standing start on a wave of low RPM torque and coast to 60 miles per hour with the engine barely at half its range. Or it can build through its rev range, asking to be used fully, rewarding the driver who holds gears longer and pushes higher, arriving at the same destination through a completely different journey. The E92 was the second kind of car. Its performance was best accessed by someone willing to use the engine, to take it into the upper half of its rev range where the S65 truly came alive, to make the gear changes at the right moments, to treat the 8,400 revolutions per minute ceiling as a destination rather than a warning. Drive it that way, and the numbers looked after themselves. Drive it lazily, treating it like a turbocharged car and short shifting for convenience, and you were leaving a significant part of the experience unused. Fact 80. Everything we have covered in this segment, the M-Drive button, the cross-drilled brakes, the wheel options, the tire stagger, the acceleration figures, the adjustable top speed, adds up to a car that delivered a particular combination of qualities that, taken together, felt genuinely unique for its time. High-rev drama from the S65, communicating its intensity through the sound and the feel, and the needle climbing toward the red line. Balance and precision from the chassis, the suspension, the differential, the weight distribution that BMW worked so carefully to achieve, and adjustability throughout. The ability to make the car softer or firmer, more or less interventionist, personalized to a profile recalled at a button press. No single one of those qualities was unique to the E92 M3. Other cars revved freely. Other cars were well balanced. Other cars offered adjustable settings. But the particular combination, all of those things simultaneously, in a car that also looked the way this one looked and sounded the way this one sounded, was not something you could find elsewhere. The E92 was the sum of its parts in a way that made the total worth considerably more than any individual component. Take a slow breath. What made the E92 especially impressive was that it could still function as a premium road car in everyday life. Segment 9. Everyday luxury and technology. This is the second to last segment, so if you're still with us, truly still with us, we're nearly at the end of the story. And if you've been drifting in and out, that's exactly as it should be. Just let the words come and go. We've spent a great deal of time with the E92 M3 as a performance machine. The engine, the chassis, the aerodynamics, the brakes, the transmissions, the adjustable systems that let the driver shape the car around their preferences. All of that is real, and all of it matters. But the E92 M3 was not a track car with number plates. It was a road car, one that people drove to work, parked at restaurants, used on long journeys, and lived with day after day in the full context of ordinary life. And for a car to do that convincingly, it needs more than performance credentials. It needs to be livable. This segment is about how the E92 managed that second half of its identity. The technology, the comfort, the everyday details that made it a premium product as well as a serious one. Fact 81. The E92 M3 was the first M3 generation to include BMW's iDrive system, the centralized control interface that BMW had introduced to its lineup in the early 2000s as a way of managing the growing number of functions and settings that modern cars required. iDrive used a rotary controller in the center console, operating in conjunction with a screen mounted high on the dashboard to give the driver access to navigation, audio, communication, and various vehicle settings through a unified interface rather than a proliferation of individual buttons. When iDrive first appeared in BMW's range, it attracted a degree of criticism. Early versions were considered complex, with deep menu structures that required familiarity before they became intuitive. By the time the E92 M3 arrived, BMW had refined the system substantially, and the version fitted to the M3 was considerably more usable than what the early adopters had experienced. Its inclusion in the M3 was a signal that the car was not only a performance machine, but a fully featured premium product, one that offered the same technological sophistication as BMW's larger, more comfort-oriented models. Fact 82. Through iDrive, the driver of an E92 M3 had access to navigation, full map guidance with postcode entry and route calculation, along with infotainment management and access to some of the vehicle's adjustable settings. The integration of navigation into the car's primary interface, rather than as a separate add-on unit, was part of what premium cars of this era were beginning to offer as standard or near-standard equipment, and the E92 M3's inclusion of it placed the car firmly in that category. The navigation system was also, in its way, a reflection of how the M3 was being used. A car equipped with serious navigation is a car its manufacturer expects to cover real distances, long drives, unfamiliar roads, journeys that required planning and guidance rather than just the short local commutes and track days that a pure performance machine might imply. The E92 was built to go places, and iDrive acknowledged that. Fact 83. Rather than a conventional key-turn ignition, the E92 M3 used a start/stop button, a push-button system that started and stopped the engine with a press rather than a rotation. In isolation, this sounds like a small detail. In context, It was part of a broader experience that BMW had carefully considered. The ritual of getting into the car, settling into the seat, and bringing the engine to life. A push-button start has a different quality to it than a key turn. It is cleaner, more deliberate, more theatrical in a quiet way. You press a button and the S65 fires, all 8 cylinders, settling into the idle that would become familiar to anyone who spent time around these cars. A composed burble that contained within it the suggestion of everything the engine was capable of when asked. The start-stop button was a small piece of theatre, but in a car whose character was built substantially on the quality of its sensory experiences, small pieces of theatre accumulated into something meaningful. Fact 84. The instrument cluster in the E92 M3 was an M-specific design, distinct from anything fitted to the standard 3 series range. The defining visual element was the illumination. Red needles on the gauges, sweeping across a white-faced display, the combination giving the cluster a precision and intensity that suited the car's character, without resorting to the aggressive styling that lesser performance cars sometimes employed. It was legible and purposeful, the kind of instrument design that communicated clearly under all lighting conditions, and carried a certain authority in the way it presented information. The red needles in particular became one of the E92's interior signatures, a detail that photographs well, that stands out in comparison to the standard car's instrumentation, and that drivers noticed every time they sat down and looked ahead. Details at the driver's primary focal point matter disproportionately to the experience of a car, because they are always there, always in view, always contributing to or detracting from the sense of occasion. The E92's cluster contributed. Fact 85. Among the instrument cluster's features was a variable red line indicator on the tachometer, a moving marker that showed not a fixed red line, but one that shifted as the engine warmed up. When the engine was cold, the marker sat lower, indicating a reduced rev limit appropriate for an engine that had not yet reached its operating temperature and whose oil had not yet fully circulated to every component that needed it. As the engine warmed, the marker rose, the available rev range expanding until the full 8,400 revolutions per minute was accessible. It was a feature that rewarded attention and communicated something real and useful, a visual reminder that engines, like the people who drive them, perform better when they have had time to reach their operating temperature. It also served as a gentle encouragement to drive carefully in the first miles of any journey, before the S65 was fully ready to be used as it was designed to be used. In a car whose engine was capable of significant stress at high revs, that encouragement was not merely aesthetic. Fact 86. Rain-sensing wipers came as standard equipment on the E92 M3. The system used a sensor mounted against the windscreen to detect the presence and rate of rainfall, automatically adjusting the wiper speed in response. Faster in heavy rain, slower in light drizzle, pausing when the screen was dry. It is a feature so commonplace today that it barely warrants mention in a new car review. But in the context of building the case that the E92 was a fully premium product rather than a performance car with basic amenities, it matters. Rain-sensing wipers are a small but real convenience. The kind of thing that, once you have experienced it, makes manually adjusting wiper speed feel like an unnecessary interruption. Their standard fitment in the M3 was part of a broader specification philosophy. This was a car that expected to be driven in real conditions, in real weather, and it was equipped accordingly. Fact 87. Automatic headlights were also standard, a system that used a light sensor to detect ambient conditions and switch the headlights on and off without driver input. As with the rain-sensing wipers, the value is in the removal of a small, repeated decision from the driver's daily experience. The car manages the lights. The driver manages the driving. In a performance car whose primary claim was the quality of the driving experience, features like automatic headlights and rain-sensing wipers served a secondary purpose beyond their direct convenience. They communicated that BMW had not treated the M3's practical equipment as an afterthought, had not stripped the car down to its performance essentials, and left the driver to manage everything else manually. The E92 was complete in both directions, outstanding to drive, and thoroughly equipped for the time around the driving. Fact 88. In United States specification, the E92 M3 came with xenon headlights as standard equipment, high-intensity discharge units that produced a brighter, whiter light than conventional halogen bulbs and consumed less power in doing so. Paired with adaptive light control, a system that turned the headlight beam in the direction of the steering to illuminate the road ahead through corners, the xenon setup gave the E92 a genuinely capable lighting package for night driving. Adaptive headlights are one of those features whose value is invisible until the moment you need them. On a familiar, well-lit road, they make no difference. On a dark, winding road that you don't know well, turning into a corner and having the light follow the bend rather than continue in the direction you just came from is immediately practically useful. It was the kind of feature that reinforced the E92's identity as a car built for serious use on real roads in real conditions, not a car designed for showing off in the daylight hours. Fact 89. For buyers who wanted their digital devices integrated with the car's audio system, BMW offered iPod and USB connectivity as an option. In the context of 2007 and 2008, when the iPod was at the peak of its cultural dominance and the smartphone era was only beginning to take shape, this was a meaningful piece of equipment. The ability to connect a device to the car and control it through the iDrive interface, rather than relying on an auxiliary cable or a separate FM transmitter. It is the kind of option that dates a car to its era in the most benign way. A reminder that the E92 was a product of a specific technological moment, when iPod integration was the cutting edge of in-car connectivity rather than a legacy consideration. But it also served as evidence that BMW was paying attention to how their buyers actually lived with technology and building the car to accommodate that rather than ignoring it. Fact 90. Step back from the individual features, the iDrive system, the start/stop button, the red needle cluster, the variable red line, the automatic wipers and lights, the xenon headlights, the device connectivity, and the picture that emerges is of a car that had resolved the tension at the heart of its identity. The E92 M3 was a serious performance machine, built with genuine motorsport thinking and capable of delivering an experience that few road cars could approach. It was also a premium coupe, fully equipped, comfortable enough for daily use, technologically current for its time, and complete in the way that buyers spending significant money on a car have every right to expect. That dual identity, performance machine and premium product simultaneously, without compromise in either direction, was not easy to achieve, and not every attempt at it succeeds. Some cars that try to be both end up being neither fully. The performance blunted by the weight of the comfort equipment, the luxury undermined by the compromises the performance required. The E92 M3 did not fall into that trap. It was genuinely both. And the combination of those two things in a single, coherent, beautifully engineered object is a large part of why the car is still talked about the way it is, not as a curiosity or a compromise, but as something close to an ideal. Take a slow breath. BMW also built versions of the E92 that pushed the formula even further, segment 10, sharper, rarer, and more collectible. This is the final segment, so if you're still with us, truly still with us, thank you for spending this time with us and with this car. And if you've been drifting in and out, that's exactly as it should be. Let the words come and go like they always have. We've traveled a long way together through the story of the E92 M3. We started at the very beginning. The engine code, the production run, the body styles, the place in BMW's history. We looked at the S65 in detail, the chassis that surrounded it, the body that expressed it, the transmissions and controls that connected it to the driver. We spent time with the technology, the luxury, the everyday competence that made the car livable as well as remarkable. Now we arrive at the final chapter, the versions of the E92 that pushed the formula further, the limited editions that turned an already rare car into something rarer still, and the place the car occupies today, what it became, and what it means. Fact 91. In 2010, BMW introduced the competition package for the E92 M3, an option that took a car already built to a high standard of dynamic performance and sharpened it further. The competition package was not a cosmetic exercise or a marketing initiative dressed in engineering language. It was a genuine collection of hardware and calibration changes with a clear purpose: to move the E92's character a step closer to the focused, demanding end of the performance spectrum. The package acknowledged something that the enthusiast community had understood since the car's launch, that the E92 M3, as impressive as it was in standard form, had more to give. That beneath its excellent baseline, there was a sharper, more committed version waiting to be unlocked. BMW's engineers knew where that version lived, and the competition package was their way of making it available to buyers who wanted it. Fact 92. One of the competition package's most immediately felt changes was a lowering of the suspension by 10 millimeters. 10 millimeters is not a dramatic number, less than half an inch. But in the context of a car whose suspension had been carefully calibrated from the outset, it was a meaningful step. Lower ride height reduces the distance the body must travel before it reaches the limits of its role, which means the car responds more directly to changes in direction. The center of gravity drops slightly. The car feels flatter, more planted, more immediately connected to the road surface beneath it. Drivers who experienced a competition package car back-to-back with a standard E92 M3 consistently noted the difference. A tautness, a sense of the car being more awake and more ready, that went beyond what the numbers alone would suggest. 10 millimeters of suspension travel in the right car, calibrated by the right engineers, can change the fundamental character of what is happening at the contact patches. Fact 93. The competition package also brought revised electronic damper control tuning and a less restrictive stability control calibration. Adjustments that, taken together with the lower ride height, shifted the E92's entire dynamic personality toward the sharper end of its range. The revised damper settings worked in concert with the reduced ride height, providing body control appropriate for the new geometry, rather than simply inheriting the standard car's calibration at a lower point. The less restrictive stability control raised the threshold at which the electronics intervened, giving a skilled driver more of the car's dynamic range to explore before the system stepped in. These were not changes that made the car difficult or dangerous. They were changes that made it more honest, more willing to tell the driver what was happening, more prepared to let the driver act on that information, more direct in its responses. The competition package E92 required more of its driver and gave more in return. Fact 94. The competition package also brought a set of 19-inch wheels, with a design inspired by the wheels fitted to the E92 M3 CSL, the lightweight, limited production version of the previous generation M3 that remains one of the most celebrated performance cars BMW has ever built. The reference to the CSL was not accidental. It was a deliberate signal, a visual connection between the competition package E92 and the M division's most focused work. An acknowledgement that this configuration of the car was operating in that tradition. The CSL-inspired wheels were distinctive enough to identify a competition package car at a glance to anyone who knew what they were looking at, and they sat within the E92's wide arches with a presence that the standard 18-inch fitment, for all its correctness, did not quite achieve. They completed the competition package's visual statement, lower, wider in appearance, and unmistakably serious. Fact 95. In 2011, BMW released the frozen grey M3 Coupe for the United States market, and released it in numbers that made it immediately extraordinary. 30 cars, not 300, not 3,000. 30 examples finished in a matte frozen grey paint that was unlike anything in the standard E92 color palette. A flat, non-reflective surface that absorbed light rather than reflecting it, giving the car a presence that was simultaneously subtle and deeply unusual. Frozen finishes were, at the time of the frozen grey's release, still rare enough in the automotive world to attract genuine attention. The paint required different care than a conventional gloss finish. No machine polishing, no abrasive products. Particular attention to washing technique. And that additional care requirement was itself part of the ownership proposition. A car that asks something specific of its owner is a car that attracts a specific kind of owner. The 30 buyers of the frozen grey M3 knew what they were getting into, and they chose it deliberately. Fact 96. If 30 examples felt rare, the frozen black edition M3 Coupe raised that bar further still. Also released for the United States in 2011, the frozen black was limited to just 20 cars. 20 examples of a flat black finished E92 M3 distributed across an entire country. The matte black paint carried all the atmospheric intensity that the color implies. Deep, light-absorbing, formal in a way that glossy black is not. Against the quad exhaust and the wide arches and the power dome, it produced a car that looked almost deliberately confrontational, a combination of form and finish, that communicated nothing except absolute seriousness. 20 cars. Of all the limited edition E92 M3s produced for the American market, the Frozen Black holds the distinction of the smallest production number. The people who own one are custodians of something genuinely rare. Not rare in the abstract way that all special editions are described as rare, but rare in the concrete way that comes from a number small enough to count on your fingers. Fact 97. The following year brought another limited edition, and this one carried a specific significance beyond its production number. The 2012 M3 Competition Edition was limited to 40 cars for the United States market, and it was built to mark 40 years of BMW M, the M division having been established in 1972, making 2012 its 40th anniversary. 40 cars for 40 years, a piece of numerical poetry that gave the edition a commemorative weight to accompany its performance credentials. The competition edition combined the competition package's dynamic specification with a distinctive appearance package. A car that was both sharper to drive than the standard E92 and more specifically meaningful in the context of the M division's history. To own one was to own a celebration of 4 decades of a philosophy. The philosophy that a road car could and should be built with the same seriousness and the same intent as a racing car, and that drivers deserve the result. Fact 98. The final special edition of the E92 M3 Cooper's production run arrived in 2013, and it announced itself in a color that made everything that had come before it look restrained. The Lime Rock Park Edition, named after the racing circuit in Connecticut, was limited to 200 cars for the United States market and finished in fire orange, a vivid, saturated shade that sat at the furthest possible remove from the understatement of the frozen editions. Fire orange on an E92 M3 was not a combination that asked to be overlooked. It was a deliberate, joyful statement of color on a car built for a specific kind of driver, someone who wanted the performance, wanted the specification, and also wanted the world to know, from a considerable distance, exactly what they were driving. 200 cars, painted the color of the final hours of sunset, carrying the E92's full performance credentials and wearing them loudly. It was an appropriate ending, the last coupe special edition before production closed, going out not with a whisper, but with every possible vibrancy. Fact 99. Beyond the special editions and the competition package, one variant of the E92 M3 existed in a category almost entirely its own. The M3 GTS, Touring Sport, in BMW's nomenclature, took the E92's platform and pushed it so far toward the racing end of the spectrum that the resulting car barely resembled the production model it had started from. The engine was enlarged from 4.0 litres to 4.4 litres, extracting more displacement from the S65's architecture and pushing power output to around 450 horsepower. The interior was stripped. No rear seats, a roll cage, a fixed bucket seat for the driver, the minimum of everything that was not directly necessary for performance. The suspension was track-focused in a way that made the competition package's 10mm lowering look conservative. The M3 GTS was not a car for the road in any practical sense, though it was road legal. It was a statement of what the E92 platform was ultimately capable of, a demonstration, built in the very small numbers and sold at a price significantly above the standard car. That the engineering beneath the production M3 had been conceived with reserves that the road car never fully called upon. The GTS called upon them. And the result was a car that sat at the absolute limit of what a road-legal, naturally aspirated V8-powered M3 could be. Fact 100. By the end of its life, the E92 M3 had become not just a great M3, but a full-blown icon of the naturally aspirated BMW M era. That is not a claim that requires much defending at this point in the story. We have spent this entire journey building the case, the engine, the chassis, the body, the transmissions, the details, the limited editions, the variants that pushed the formula to its limit and beyond. Everything has led here, to this final fact, which is really just a summation of everything that came before it. A car built around an engine that BMW would never put in an M3 again. Engineered with a seriousness and a completeness that reflected the full capability of the M division at a particular moment in its history. Styled with a visual identity that expressed its engineering honestly and that has aged with the confidence of something that was right from the beginning. Driven by the people who understood it, collected by the people who recognized what it was, and remembered by everyone who ever sat inside one and took it somewhere it was designed to go. The E92 M3 was the last of a particular kind of thing, a high-revving, naturally aspirated, mechanically communicative performance car built in an era that still valued those qualities above the alternatives. That ending gives it a significance beyond its considerable intrinsic merit. It represents a choice that BMW made once and then moved away from. A combination of engine, chassis, and character that existed in this specific form for 6 years and has not existed since. If you have stayed with us all this way, through 100 facts, through 10 segments, through hours of quiet and words, and the slow drift towards sleep, then somewhere, in whatever part of you is still listening, you understand why people still talk about this car, why they seek out well-maintained examples and pay prices that would have seemed extraordinary when it was new, why forums are still active, why communities are still growing, why the E92 M3 still means something to people who have never even sat in one. It was and remains one of the great ones. Thank you for spending this time with us and with the car. Rest now.